Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Skillfluence CPD webinar around a model for high-impact ECR training for industry engagement. We're kind of just getting started. I see a bunch of people are still joining, so as you join, welcome. I'm Zach, and if you could do a great big favor and introduce yourself in the chat box, that would be fantastic. So kind of your name, organization, and maybe one word that describes how you're feeling right now. What's the one word that describes how you're feeling right now? And remember, when you use the chat box, there's a drop-down menu that you can select all panelists and attendees. Make sure you select that so everybody can see your comments. Otherwise, it'll just come to me, and that's not very much fun for everybody else. Right, fantastic. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go ahead and get started. We got lots of stuff to go through, so I'm going to go ahead and get cracking with this. We've got a great group of attendees coming in, so this is really good. And thank you everybody for taking the time out of your day, and thanks in advance for our kind of guest speakers that we have. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a program that we recently ran, really looking at an approach for running a industry-centric training for early career researchers. And we're going to look at it from really 4 key perspectives. We're going to look at it from the perspective of the organizer. So as they were thinking about putting this together, the perspective of the industry coordinator, the perspective of the researcher, and the perspective of the facilitator, who is myself. And really the idea is to take away some key learnings. I've got one quick question before, and this is for my own curiosity at the day, because in this new world that we live in, we have there are kind of 2 types of people as we're working from home. There are the people, I call them the pajama people. These are the people that come up to go to their webinars and their virtual meetings and different things still in their pajamas all day long. And then we've got the professional people, the people who get up, take a shower, get dressed, put on a suit and tie, and kind of go to work. I'd be curious to know if you're a pajama person or a professional person. So if you're a pajama person, type 1 in the chat box. So if you're still rocking your pajamas, 1 in the chat box. If you're a professional person, type 2 in the chat box. Nice. 1.5. I'd like to know what a 1.5 is. Cool. A lot of 1.5. See, I feel like 1.5 is about the appropriate level now. And I wonder what'll happen in 2 weeks' time. Halfway between. Same here. So fantastic. So anyways, thanks for coming. So you guys shared your words. I've actually got 2 words on my mind. I'm Zach again. For those who didn't get my introduction at the start, 2 words. One, and to be quite fair, is I'm actually quite a bit worried. I think a lot of us are sharing this perspective. I've got family and who are a bit older, and I'm a bit concerned about that. And I think all of us are kind of in that similar situation. We've got family and friends and these types of things, people working on the front line. And I think that's just the reality of the situation. So that's part of where my head's at right now. But I think the other thing is I'm super excited around today and this webinar. This is from a program they ran a wee while back, and in the preparation, we've been speaking to our guest speakers and really looking forward to the things that they've got to share. I think there's some exciting insights and value to come from this. So my 2 words are a little bit worried, but also a lot of optimism and excitement around this. Okay, so as we go through this, one thing I'd like you to do is the goal from this, if you will, is if we can take this hour and if we can give you, if you can get one new idea, one insight, a learning, or a key action that you can take as a result of this as related to developing industry-centric training, I feel like that would be a good use of an hour's time. And so if we can kind of come away with that for each of you, that would be a success from my standpoint. And one of the things I want to think about for the webinar guidelines so that you guys get the most value out of this, please type your questions and comments in the chat box directly, again, using the all panelists and attendees, so that everybody can learn from that. If you want it to be private, just do it to panelists. Allison, the founder, CEO of Skillfluence, she'll be kind of answering those. And also, as we listen to the interviews, please do kind of put the questions to the panelists as we're going along, and we'll get those answered. We will record the webinar after. We will record the webinar during this, so we'll share it after. You're on mute, so we can't hear you, just so you know, so don't yell at the screen. We can't hear you. And hopefully we'll get this finished in around 60 minutes, plus or minus. I don't think it'll be any shorter. We might run a little bit over, so just kind of in terms of the timing on this. Why are we doing this? There are really three key reasons why we're doing this. One is to learn from each other, right? So there's a great opportunity to just learn from each other around this, to help facilitate a conversation. And we believe the more conversations we can have around this, thinking about this, the smarter we will all get. And finally, is to really build and support the community around this. Many of us are working on similar challenges at our own organizations. So it's how do we work together to help each other and to support each other, not just in these kind of challenging times, but also just in general around the project, if you will, of helping researchers and PhD students develop those industry-centric skills. One thing to do, so we're going to keep doing this. We did this about 2-3 months ago, really successful, lots of interest. So we're going to keep doing this again and again. So mark your calendar on April 30th, same time, same place. We're going to do another webinar, but this time around online and remote training. Also, if you'd be interested in becoming a guest speaker for that, express your interest at the end with the exit survey, and maybe there'll be an opportunity to kind of highlight some of the things you guys are working on. So mark your calendar. We're going to keep on moving forward with this. Lots of cool stuff to talk about. Okay, and at the very end, just kind of a hook to the end to stick around, we're going to talk about specifically about what we're doing to go online with some of these programs that we're talking about, because it's highly relevant now. And so we're going to give you some specific things that we're doing about taking some of this stuff online. So hopefully that'll be interesting. And there's some really opportunities for those who want to take kind of advantage of some of these kind of the early movers, if you will, around this. So really quickly, we're Skillfluence. Don't want to spend too much time talking about this. You guys hopefully know us. If you don't, check us out. We basically specialize in developing and delivering online training, or sorry, just training programs in general for PhDs and early career researchers around those industry-specific skill sets. All right. I'm Zach. Some of you may have met me before. Some of you may have come to my programs before. I'm an entrepreneur. I've got my own business. I'm in charge of head of innovation and industry engagement at Skillfluence. And I've worked with multinationals, SMEs, startups, spin-outs, universities, economic development agencies. My perspective is definitely from an industry standpoint, not an academic standpoint. And so that's kind of what I bring to the party. And I had the opportunity to facilitate this program that we're going to be talking about at the University of Southampton. Okay. So very quickly, I would like to get a sense of what your mindset is, not just about what you're wearing, but what's your mindset as related to kind of this type of training in your organization. So I'm going to launch a poll, and if you could take just a quick minute and give us your thoughts on this. So I'm going to make this live now, and just get a sense of where you guys, your heads are at. Okay, cool. So yeah, just keep them coming in. So really just trying to get a sense, has this become a higher priority with a new situation? Is it less of a priority? Has it changed? Is it the same? All right, I'm going to give 10 more seconds. Okay, and closing in 3, 2, 1. Okay, cool. So we're going to share the results here very quickly. And right, so you can kind of see what's going on here. Lots of people, some people it's become more of a priority. Okay, that's interesting. Some people it's changed a little bit. All right, so good. Just want to get a sense of how people are feeling. So I'm going to stop that share, and we're going to get on. Oops. Oh, no, you can't see the poll. Let's see. Let's try it again. Can you share it now? Can you see it now? Got it? What I can do as well is we can screenshot, get this and share that with everybody as well. Okay, cool. All right. So the program that we're going to talk about now, I want to get into the program. It was basically run over 2 days, University of Southampton. It was a 2-day residential, 40 cross-discipline early career researchers. We had lots of industry engagement with this as well. And it was kind of a co-design and co-delivery process with the University of Southampton and Mike as well, who you'll meet in a minute. We'll talk through it. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the program specifically. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring Michelle on. And she's going to she was the organizer, and she's going to kind of take us through some of the things, her perspective on this. So Michelle, can you join the party here?
Hi all. Hello. Hope you can hear me.
Hey Michelle.
Hi there.
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm sat in my bed socks, so not completely pajamas. I'm kidding on that, but yes.
I notice it is just the headshot.
Yeah,
you've done that quick.
Downwards it goes down. Yeah, yeah.
Great. So just in the essence of time, Michelle, I was wondering, just to kind of give a quick perspective, like quick background, 30 seconds, like who are you? What are you working on? What kind of group are you with at the university? What's your role? What are your responsibilities?
So I have actually a dual function at the university. So I sit within RIS, Research and Innovation Services, as a business engagement manager. So I'm pleased to see we have some friendly faces who are participants from Southampton. So I'm pleased to see that. So I engage with academics and researchers who want to do more with industry. So I spend a lot of time talking to academics, talking to businesses, and trying to broker some deals, some work together, collaborative funding. So that's one role. The other role is I look after Southeast Physics Network for Southampton. It's a consortium of universities, but that's placing students within industry. So still a big industry engagement piece that I look after at Southampton.
Okay, cool. So into the program. So can you kind of take everybody through what it was, where did the idea come from? Why did you do it? What were you trying to achieve? Just kind of a 40,000 foot view of the program, if you will.
Sure. I think in many ways, as my role is going out and talking to researchers, there was a real need for supporting those researchers and those academics in engaging with industry. And it's not always an easy gig. There are times when you think, well, actually, what have I got to offer to industry? How do I shape my technology, my ideas, my research? So it is a really big plus for industry. And then how do I package that so that I get some interest in it? And I was having those conversations quite often with researchers, early career researchers at the university. And hence why we thought, with the support of STFC, ESRC and EPSRC funding, it was Impact Acceleration funding, we would put together this 2-day course which would really go through all of those things. How do you strike up that conversation with industry? How do you say, do you know what, I might have something that might be of interest to you. Let's have a further discussion about it. And that's how it came about, really, answering a need. Right. I suppose I should also say the flip side is, because I'm spending lots of time talking to companies were often saying, I would really like to talk to somebody about X, Y, Z, but I haven't got a clue how I break into the university scene and address those academics or those researchers that I need to talk to. So our program was really to bridge the gap.
So this was, as much as anything, for, you know, in terms of you were trying to address both the need from the industry's perspective and the researcher's perspective.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's why a key part of what we did, and we'll go on no doubt to talk about it with Mike, was to have industry involvement in our 2-day session.
Had you done anything like this before? Or was this kind of the first time you'd run a program like this?
We hadn't actually. I think it was so focused and it was quite intensive over those 2 days. We've not done anything to those extremes, to those levels. And at the numbers, we had really high numbers of people who attended. We had 40 people sat in the room, 40 early career researchers sat in the room, and 20 odd industries, companies that came in and joined us. So we've not done anything to such a large scale.
So this is interesting when we kind of the fact that you guys had 40, and I remember when we were kind of in the planning and the recruiting process, or you were in, there was a moment when there was like, you weren't sure of how many people were going to attend and everything. And if I remember correctly, it actually became oversubscribed. Can you talk to me a little bit about the demand for that, and also how you stimulated demand for it? Because I think a lot of folks in the audience, one of the challenges is always, or concerns is you put on a big program, nobody shows up, and how to mitigate some of those risks.
We actually had more interest than I think we ever imagined would be the case. So we had 90 odd applicants, or 90 odd folks putting their hand in the air and saying, we're really keen on this. So we did have to have a sifting process so that we could get to a reasonable number that would work over a 2-day training. But yeah, we wanted to go multidisciplinary. So we went across the university to all academics, early career researchers who were keen on doing something with industry, but actually needed some guidance as to how you make that first step, or how you package what it is you've got to offer. So we went wide, and it meant that the room and the interest came from across the university. So I think having that multidisciplinary perspective on what we're wanting to do had loads of pluses, because it meant we had lots of people really keen on coming on board, and we use lots of different resources to get into those folks across the university, lots of different networks and promotional ways of reaching out to that audience.
Could you talk maybe a little bit, the fact that you're doing kind of some sort of filtering process, I think is kind of interesting, and how did you do that? Like, what, from a specifically, how did that work? Was there like an application process? Was there, did they need to get approval from somebody? I mean, because I think, how do we manage that whole process?
There was an application process. It wasn't, overly onerous, this application process, but we were keen to make sure that whoever was attending the course would actually take something away that they could apply or use or put to good purpose afterwards. So it wasn't just sitting for 2 days listening, but not really having a great impact on what people were taking away. So we did sift. We were also looking, because the funding came from ESRC, EPSRC and STFC, we were keen to make sure we had folk who sat under the themes of those funders, because they were supporting this event. So that helped to see who we invited onto the program amongst the final 40 that came. We also had a huge number of PhD students who came forward and said, this is something of real interest to us. And I think going forward, we would quite like to look at rolling out a similar program, but aimed at PhDs. This, we were quite specific, needed to be early career researchers and staff at the university, in effect. So I think next time around, looking at PhDs would be another opening that clearly there's need again for.
Great. Okay. Actually, this was leading to my next question, and I see there's a comment in the chat box around this, so we'll go ahead and ask this right now. It is around diversity, and you touched on it there, around the diversity of the group, and from there are different kind of research perspectives, if you will, and also there was a diversity in terms of experience level. Can you talk a little bit about, was this a conscious decision, and how do you think that impacted the program? I mean, we had some conversations around, is it good to be more diverse, less diverse, and how that impacts it? Would you mind kind of sharing some thoughts around the diversity in the room?
Initially, we had thought this diversity would help to support people in verbalizing or pitching their research ideas to a group that had absolutely no idea what their research was. So completely different groups. So you had an engineer talking to a health scientist about what their research was. And it really led to some really interesting conversations, because the health scientist was saying, this is a great idea. You should be looking at XYZ industry. And it would change completely the mindset of the engineer who was keen on working with a certain industry, but had sort of ruled out any others because he thought that might not apply. So having this multidisciplinary effect, people were sparring off of one another. And also because we weren't all from the same group, we weren't all engineers or we weren't all health scientists, people people were quite happy to say, do you know what, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about or how this research would be of interest to industry. You're going to have to break it down for me. And that was good, because it brought it down slightly so that people knew that, in fact, when you're in front of industry, you might not be talking to an expert in your field. So you do need to try and repitch or repackage what it is that you're wanting to show with or share with industry.
Right. Okay, cool. We've got, I would love to like keep talking forever. Like literally we could talk probably just an hour with you around this. But I want to start to wrap up and be able to move to some questions, but quickly, any kind of, if someone were looking to, from an organizer's perspective, from your perspective, if someone was looking to kind of do this in their organization, something similar, any kind of maybe top 2 tips, maybe things to think about moving forward, and maybe a couple things that you might do a little bit differently if you were to do it again?
I think we were very, very lucky in that we had created a safe space for people to talk about their research. No one was going to be critical about it, to talk about how far they'd come with industry. And there were so many anecdotes in the room, people who'd really done great guns with industry and others who were struggling. And creating this safe space, I think, was so important for the success of the program, because people felt at ease to spar off of one another. There was no judgment here. And in fact, when you're working with researchers, there is this striving to perfection. You know, let me just run this analysis one last time. But we didn't need that here. We were saying to people, even if you've just got a glimmer of an idea of what you could offer to industry, share it with us. So we kept this safe space going. So that would be my first one tip. I think, secondly, having the multidisciplinary worked really well, because, as I said, people were able to spar off of one another. But one thing I perhaps took away was that there were certain pockets within that group who might have needed different areas of coaching, which, again, if we replicated this, we might try and adjust that. So if you have a piece of kit or something tangible that you're trying to promote or package to industry, it's very different from if you have a skill that you're offering to industry. How do you offer that skill as opposed to that widget? So I think that those are the 2 top tips. I think I'd look at maybe dividing your multidisciplinary group into those that have a skill that they're offering and those that actually have something tangible that you can hold, feel that you're offering.
Right. Okay, cool. And we got time for one question. And this is like, it's a really simple question, right? Which is, I always feel bad giving it to you, but how'd you measure impact out of this? How are you thinking about impact for programs like this?
Well, we did do a feedback form afterwards, and I've kept in contact with lots of the early career researchers who are attending. And fortunately, I'm so pleased that some of them are taking their pitches and have suddenly got brave, and they are going out to industry and just putting themselves out there, just going for it. And they're emailing me and saying, Michelle, I've approached this company. Do you know what? I've had quite a positive response. Never thought I would do it, but I'm doing it. And I think, in fact, #silver lining, the fact that we are all working at home means that I have never had so much contact with companies as I have now, because they're all sat at home, possibly in their pajamas, but all sat at home waiting for calls or able to speak to you because they haven't got an urgent lunchtime business meeting, which means they're not going to be around. So this is really a good time to start engaging.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was someone I'd worked with at another program. No, it was actually the Southampton program. Now that I mention that, who was looking for to kind of get into industry, and she was really unsure about her CV, and she had sent me a CV. It was Angela actually. She sent me her CV, and it was extremely academic. And fantastic skills. And she sent me that, and I gave her some feedback on ways to improve it, make it a little bit better. And literally, yesterday she sent me her updated version, and it was like a totally different thing. And it's like everybody has this time now to start to kind of refocus and apply some of these things. So yeah, I would second that #silver lining piece for sure. Can we take that one?
#silver lining with bed socks.
With bed socks, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle, fantastic. Like an absolute delight to work with, and real treat. Thank you so much for your help. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say goodbye to you now, and we're going to talk to Mike for a little bit. If that's okay.
Okay, pleasure. Bye all.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye. Okay, so good stuff. So we've already went through one question from Michelle. Again, keep the questions coming in, and we'll do our best to kind of respond to those as best we can, and we'll also kind of pass them along. Maybe we'll see if we can figure out ways to incorporate those in maybe a blog post or a long form email or something like that to give some feedback around that. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is how we brought industry involved in this. And I think there was one of those questions around on the chat that was specifically, how did you tactically do that? And I'd like to bring on Mike, because Mike Rushworth was really in charge of this, and we had the opportunity to work collaboratively with him on this. So I'm going to just pass it over to Mike. First, Mike, nice to see you. How you doing?
Hey, Zach. Hey, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good you made it back from France okay? Happy, safe, and sound.
Cheers, buddy.
Cool. So maybe before we kind of get into the specifics of the industry engagement activity, just a quick overview, tell us about yourself. What was your perspective on this? Kind of what were you bringing to the party, so to speak?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in business and in engineering. 2014, I started a coaching practice. So I now sort of describe myself as a performance coach. The thing I really get a kick out is out of, and I do mainly, is one-to-one coaching. But occasionally I get involved in workshops, and I was really struck by the way Michelle presented this one to me. And the opportunity there to do some good and to help some young people was just too tempting. So we dived right in. And there were two things in particular that I was trying to bring to this. One was about was to provide some background that said you're not alone. There are other people in the university that have the same issues, same challenges, and the university knows something. So that was the whole case study piece that we did the item on. And then the other was to try and provide some external links, ready-made links into industry, so that as participants leave at the end of the 2 days, they come out with something tangible immediately. Not only the training, but also I know who to ring up if I've got a question. Right. So it was really those two pieces that I was leading on.
Right. Okay. Cool. So there were two pieces. There was this two kind of specific elements. This case study element and the panel piece. Let's kind of explore those in a little bit more detail separately. So can you talk to me a little bit about the idea behind the case study? What were you trying to achieve with it? Where did the idea come from? Why were you doing it? And then tactically, so if someone else were to kind of want to implement something similar, what was the process? And then what worked? And then maybe what you might do a little bit differently if you were to do it again?
Yeah. Okay, sure. I think perhaps the driving force was, with my background as a coach, I was interested to try and find a way of helping participants reflect on their own experience. And for that, they needed some kind of measure, some yardstick. And I think what other recent early career researchers could do for them was just present a bit of a description of what was their experience and some of the emotions behind that. And then we did a slightly reflective piece of saying, okay, which bits of what's been presented to you really resonate? What are the things? And I think that having done that, what we were able to do was to get people to really engage with what's the experience of working with industry. What is it really going to be like? What's it going to feel like? So I think that was kind of what was behind it, Zach.
Okay. And so how did you, could you tell a little bit about, when we talk about a case study, what was that? And was it a 5-page document? Was it a 1-page thing? Yeah. And how did we get those together?
Yeah. So I think the key thing here is I produced for Michelle a template. We wanted to keep it concise, so we said about a page. I think we had some that were a little shorter and some a little longer. And then Michelle worked with each of the authors, and I think we had 4 in the end, 4 or 5.
So who were the authers? Sorry to interrupt.
So they were in the main early career researchers or people who just moved on through a little bit further in the career. But okay. they were very similar profile in a sense to the participants.
Okay, so that's interesting. I wasn't actually quite aware of that. It was that, so the people that were authoring the case studies were actually weren't the businesses, so but it was the career researchers, the researchers.
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't narrow it down to that specifically, but that was, I think, when Michelle was doing the selection, that was kind of the way it came out.
Okay.
I think the important thing was then to start with was in how do you define what's going to be of interest and real value in the case study. I picked out a couple of things just to share. We kept the outline really simple, an outline of the work, the key lessons learned, and what would you do differently next time. Within the outline, we were looking for what were the deliverables, what were the achievements, and then what resources were required. So you can see a bit of a framework developing right there. And then the other thing under the key lessons learned was we listed for them a number of the elements of the training that you were delivering over the 2 days to try and pick out in the case studies what are good examples of that kind of skill. So that was to try and provide some hooks into what else was going to be delivered throughout the 2 days.
Right.
So yeah, a little bit about the background, what was necessary, what was achieved, and how does it link to the rest of the training in the 2 days.
Okay. And if we were to kind of pick up on, what you thought worked really well in that approach, and maybe some, one thing that worked really well and one thing you might do a little bit differently to make it a little bit more effective for next time.
I think if it was one thing, I would say the reinforcing the learning in the rest of the workshop worked really well. There were a number of things pulled out in the case studies that people noticed. And then I think you and I were speaking a bit after the event, and clearly that had set those hooks really well. So that worked great. I think the big thing I would do differently next time, it was something we'd intended to do, but we didn't quite manage to carry it off, was to have the authors of the case studies actually there a couple of them were there, but more as participants. Actually have them there, be able to bring them to the front and give their perspective in terms of answers to the questions that came up.
Yeah, that would have helped bring it to life even more for sure.
I think so, yeah.
Cool. And maybe, so let's just take a quick kind of shift. If you can talk a little bit, talk us through in a similar way, the panel process, because it turned into something a little bit different than what might have been, people might think of as a traditional panel.
Yeah, it did, sure. And I think that format for the panel would be a very interesting thing to share. I mean, the background for that was quite straightforward. It was, let's give people something concrete when they go away, they've got some contacts, they've met some people. I think, who
were the panel members actually, just to start? Who ended up coming?
Yeah, so
not specifically, but who were the types?
No, we had a range. So we were looking for people who were had senior roles in businesses local to the area, so local to Southampton in this case. So it was broadly central southern England. They were senior, but there were a range of businesses, so there were large and small, and sort of very small companies or entrepreneurs, but also some bigger organizations. And we did look for people who had an interest, an inbuilt interest in working with academics as well.
Okay.
The process really was to put an interesting brief for companies together, get that out there, some kind of selection when we had people responding positively, and then get them in the discussion. After the discussion, we also involved them in the evening in a networking session, so there could be a more informal element. So a couple of really important things from my perspective. One was to get the introductions to relevant industry people. I think it was really, really helpful to have somebody very well connected in the local area. I'm reasonably well connected, hence taking this on. But in my case, I went to somebody who was in the leadership team of the local enterprise partnership. Obviously, there are similar organizations locally. Chambers of Commerce might be able to do a similar thing. And they were the ones who had the main contacts, and they were able to go to the top to get the right people involved. So I think that's a vitally important lesson. The other
So
thing
even
was,
if you don't necessarily have all those contacts to forge relationships with the folks that do have those contacts.
yeah, I think so, and also to reinforce the credibility of the effort that you're making. You know, something
Right.
really important and valuable is being put together here, and it needs somebody who can describe to industry where, you know, ways in which that's important and valuable
Right.
and worth supporting. Yeah, and then the format, I kind of had in mind the standard, you know, we'll get 4 to 5 people up there, they'll do a little introduction, they'll take questions, we might seed a few questions just to get things going. But we took the opportunity to take all the panelists that were suitable, but were prepared to come. We ended up with a lot more people prepared to come than we'd expected.
Yeah.
And we thought, no, let's go with this and see if we can organize. What came out, I think, was a breath of fresh air in terms of the way we did it. So, in brief, we had 8 panelists in the end. What we did was to bring them to the front for 15 seconds to show people who they were, and then allocated them 2 per table, so that they would have a table of 8 or 10 people that they could talk to more intimately.
Right.
And we didn't try and move them around. We left them with that table. So they introduced themselves to 8 or 10 people. They had the in-depth discussion. They could take the specific discussions from the participants at their table. And then for the plenary, for the debrief at the end, we asked the panelists to stand up in turn and present just 2 of the most interesting parts of discussion, the most valuable parts of discussion at their table. So they, in a sense, did the selection of what did they think had been the most helpful part of that discussion. And then we just went around the room, asked them to stand up and share that. And I think that format, although we were making it up slightly on the fly, I think that worked really well, and I would definitely do it again.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit more interactive than what you would think of as a traditional panel conversation. And I think you had the ability for more participants, well, higher level of participant engagement, basically, you know, and going a little bit deeper into the specific issues that were relevant to each of those. So yeah, it was interesting. So just for essence of time, going to kind of move on here and kind of introduce Lucy in a second, but maybe one, you know, bit of advice, suggestion, words of wisdom from an industry engagement standpoint for folks who would be considering doing something similar.
There's an interesting point for me came up in the participant selection. And I'm not saying that this would be the same in every institution, but I think deciding where to take that, to take people, to accept applications from, it is vitally important. The sense that I got from there was excitement, energy, a willingness to learn. And if it's okay to say this in this company, I mean this in the nicest possible way, a lot lower ego element than I've experienced in similar types of workshops. And that made for the most wonderful kind of atmosphere, just a learning atmosphere. So however in anyone's organization they can engender that, thinking carefully, and maybe it's that early career research or early PhD kind of level that automatically brings that. But whatever can be, however that can be supported and engendered, I think that adds a huge amount to what you can get out of that kind of event.
That's a fantastic way to finish your piece, Mike. I appreciate it. Again, same as with Michelle. I think we could probably just have an hour webinar, just you and I talking about this. Maybe next time we'll get you up to Glasgow here soon. So, all right. Thanks, Mike. I'm going to say goodbye to you now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. How time flies. So what I'd like to do next is to bring on Lucy Gates, and Lucy was one of the participants, and she's an ECR, and kind of talking through her perspective on it. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of. Our role is to serve these people. Our role is to serve Lucy's of the world and to provide them with the tools and skills they need. So to get her reactions to kind of what worked, what didn't work, what she liked, why she got involved, I think that could be really interesting. So, hey, Lucy.
Hi, Zach. What a lovely introduction. Thanks. You're going to serve me.
This is our job, right? This is what we do.
Perfect.
Maybe a great way to start. Tell us quickly about yourself, what you're working on, what you're into, kind of why you got involved in this.
Sure. So I'm a senior research fellow. I'm 5 years now postdoc, so I'm still classed as an early career researcher. I study disease such as osteoarthritis, patterns in disease across the world, really. And I'm beginning only recently to start linking with industry partners. This is really timely for me right now. I'm also one of a number of early career research representatives within the School of Health Sciences at the University of Southampton. So basically I represent a whole host of our ECRs within the university.
Okay, great. And so you're obviously got a few things going on, a little business. I know you got a little girl running around in the background as well. So
Yes.
you don't necessarily have a ton of extra time. So why did you decide to take 2 days out of your very busy schedule to attend something like this? What were you hoping to get out of it?
Well, two days is precious. Focused time to learn and be in a networking environment is so vital, and we don't often get these opportunities. And for me, like I said, I'm in the early stages of linking with industry. So this course was really, really timely for me. And I just valued having that focused time to dedicate to some effort and to learn about linking with industry.
Okay. And so, you probably, there are lots of different programs, development programs, I'm sure, that you can take advantage of. Where do you see that these types of programs, fill a gap, if you will? What is the gap that they are filling? How might we get more of these types of things available to you guys?
I think the gap depends on maybe where the discipline is. So for some people, the gap is actually engaging with industry. It's understanding how to talk to industry partners, what to do with that relationship. Mm-hmm. I think for people like me, and maybe more so in health sciences, it's what is that industry? What industry do we need? Who are these people that we need? Do we even need it? Some of us don't even know that in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then it's how to engage with them, how to deal with these relationships. So some of us need a whole host of these steps when engaging with industry, but others are already quite well prepared and need the more specifics that I think are probably provided by the course that we had last month. And I think there is an opportunity there to tailor these type of courses depending on not necessarily the discipline, but also the individuals, where they are in their career stage, how much they've worked with industry before, and how much they're going to be doing with industry going forward. That's
kind of come up a couple of times. From what Michelle said as well, do you think that is something that you would do, is to go kind of more focused in a way, whether it be for specific sectors or specific skill areas, or how do you think you'd manage that? What's the balance you feel is right between being more specific, more general, and broad?
It's difficult because it was so valuable having that network of multi-professionals in the room, because as health professionals, we were able to bounce off of engineers who already have some exposure to industry. So that was really important, I think, in the first day. That was brilliant. And then it's almost like that second day could have been where we consider that more specific element, depending on what we've already been exposed to in our industry links. It's a very difficult one to get. It may be that there could be multiple courses. Ones are more general and ones that are far more specific for those that have already had an element of exposure to industry partnerships.
Right. Okay. So kind of, this is obviously, you've identified, or you've come to the realization or understanding that this is a really important area for you personally that you want to develop. Why do you think, and this isn't something new, right? That the collective we have been working on, how do we upskill in this area for researchers for a good while. It's become more important, but it isn't a new thing. Why do you think, as kind of an insider, if you will, why do you think it's such a challenge to do this?
I don't I don't think it's a challenge to help ECRs to learn. We are sponges. We want to learn. That's why we're in this job. So once you have our attention, we will learn. I think the challenge is engaging us in the first place. It's understanding for us that there is actually, for the majority of us, there is a need and a benefit in linking with industry, but we're not encouraged to do it. So I think in the first instance, it's encouraging ECRs to know that these sort of links and collaborations with industry are important, if not in the immediate term, but in the long term, they'll be important for a sustainable future in research. It helps with funding, it helps with everything, but it's just getting ECRs to know that in the first place. And I think then the challenge comes with getting these courses known. So work with universities to spread the word, really.
So kind of follow-up question to that. This is going to be the million pound question is how would you do that? Like what do you think would get researchers, in your position to kind of pause, lean forward? Because I believe the same thing. I think it's once we get them in the room and start working on it, and it becomes, they're usually your sponges. You want to learn these things, but how do you get people to take that first step forward?
In terms of making them realize that the course is there, you mean?
In general, either saying I want that, or to let them know about that. Either way.
I think sometimes it's worth engaging with the ground force, so engaging with us. So there are many of me across the university, as early career researcher representatives, we are the ones that help deliver training by finding out what ECRs want, and just through communicating with each other. So part of it is actually the ECRs are key to that. And then it's working with people like research and development teams like Michelle. It's their contacts that are the ones, it's just talking, making us aware that things might exist. They might not be on the horizon in our university at that time, but most departments have the ability to provide these courses if there's enough demand for it. So in the first instance is talking with ECRs.
Okay. Do you feel, is that not, you don't, so that's not happening on a regular basis, or to the degree that, and not to say, I don't want to, say anything negative about anybody at University of Southampton or anything like that. But in general, is just, do we feel that there's an opportunity to get a higher degree of dialogue between the ECRs and the ones who are organizing the programs?
Yeah, I think definitely there's always scope for that. And like I said earlier, it's across disciplines. Some people aren't naturally encouraged to do it anyway. So I think just having those university-wide emails going around and things that suggest that there's an opportunity to do such a thing is how I got there. Is how I found the course. I didn't know it existed. So a bit of
an awareness raising, some more awareness raising activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So just kind of, this is your opportunity and the listener's opportunity. What would be the advice that you would give? So the likes of someone like Michelle, who's organized this program, and there'll be similar folks to Michelle all around the country, all around the world doing this. What would be the advice that you would give them as they consider running programs, as they're designing programs, as they're marketing programs to the audience? What would be kind of the words of wisdom that you would pass along to them?
I think as the content of the program becomes more specific, you need to approach more specific disciplines or target audiences, tailor it. Some people don't know how to engage with industry. Some people don't know how to find industry partners. Some people don't know what to do once they found them. So it might be a case of tailoring to those populations, basically, of our ECRs.
Right. So just adapting how you're communicating with them and the actual offering, right?
Yeah. So, whilst you can offer it up to the whole university and make the whole university aware that these courses exist, I think then when you're looking at the more specifics of these courses, you need to consider how you tailor your advertising to each of the different professions within the university, the different departments within the university.
Right. So it's this balancing act, right, between breadth and depth, right? And if you make it more focused, it might not be right for some people, but it'll be even better for the ones it's really targeted at.
Absolutely.
Cool. And just kind of, you obviously enjoyed the program. You thought it was useful. I wonder if you could just, what were some of your kind of the best bits, highlights, key things that you took away, that you go, I'd really like to apply this for, or that you've shared with others, with your team, and then kind of feeding off of that is maybe one or two things you think, this maybe could have been a little bit better.
The highlights were the networking, being in a room full of other professions who have completely different experience with industry. We were bouncing off of each other. We learned a lot just from each other in that room. And I think aside from the networking point of view, the way the program was delivered was perfect for us. It was tailored to each of us within the room at different points of the program. We were able to develop business skills, networking skills. We all came away with a pitch that we could take to industry. If we were stuck in an elevator with someone, we all now have that pitch that we can use going forward. And we also learned ways. We learned more about our skills, basically, in industry, what we can take to industry and how we sell ourselves to industry. But then also thinking, what do we need from industry? I never thought about that. So those type of skills I've now been able to take forward since then and put into funding applications. Even to this current day, right now we're putting in funding applications to help COVID-19 research programs. And that is now linking with industry as well. And all of the business type networking skills, speaking skills, I've now been able to put into these applications immediately.
Great. Fantastic. So we've got time for at least one question. So I'd like to, there's one from the audience, which I think is a really interesting question. I guess from your perspective personally, but maybe if you can, if you get a sense from maybe your team as well, do the participants, do early career researchers, is there a bias or a preference towards the types of companies that they're would like to work with or engage with, whether it's, startups, SMEs, multinationals, et cetera? Is there a feeling because these are quite different, right? And how you engage with each of those different businesses would be potentially quite different. Do you get a sense that there's a preference around that or a bias?
Yeah, there's definitely preferences depending on what stage of your career you're at, what you're applying for. So big fellowship grants, they want to see larger companies involved, whereas smaller pots of money, you are going to be looking at those more local startup companies, or it may be that people are looking to actually start up their own company but linking with other industry companies. So I'd say there are certainly preferences, differences across ECRs, depending on who they work with and what stage of their career they're at, and how much funding they need as well.
Right. And do you have a personal preference? Where's your
that answers the question, because
no, it's perfect. And I just want to give you a chance. Let's see. I've got another question coming in here. Actually, I'm just going to go and ask you. I'm going to give you a chance to help you. So, what are you looking for, Lucy? What are you working on? What are you interested in right now?
So I'm looking to work with a commercial partner to develop a new digital app to be used in healthcare to help people self-manage musculoskeletal conditions. So for me, I'm looking for intermediate-sized companies to help in the development process and then take through to the marketing. So that's what I'm working on right now.
All right. So I'm just my connector role here is if anybody in the audience knows anybody who would like to work with Lucy on that, right? Find her on LinkedIn, send me an email, and we'll help her do that, right?
I wasn't expecting that plug, but thank you.
All right, Lucy, I'm gonna say goodbye to you now. That was fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye to you?
Oh, just a massive thank you. You've absolutely changed my career in a month.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you've just made my day. You made my week. You've made my month. Thanks, Lucy.
There you go.
All right, cool. I'll see you later.
Bye, Zach.
Bye. Okay. I swear I didn't pay her for that. I swear I didn't pay her for that. So great. Thanks, Lucy. Let's keep on moving. We got a couple things on a wrap up. So my thoughts on this. So I had some perspectives on this as well. And just to kind of summarize this and then kind of talk about what's happening online. So first thing, I think it's come up a couple of times, this idea of different experience levels. I think it's a potential positive and a challenge. Having those different experience levels and diversity in the room absolutely gives the opportunity for people to learn from each other. Someone who's been doing it for 8 years versus someone who's just been getting started, they can share from each other. However, it does create challenges to pitch it at the content at the right level. So I think it's understanding the give and the take around that is just worth kind of being aware of. The other thing that's come up, the value of feedback. So what we're trying to do, and this has come up in other programs, is the ability to let people work on things and then to give real-time feedback to help them get better. And it changes this from a one-directional bit of information to an actual real learning process. You can move it forward, and everybody feels like it's personalized. Second thing is challenging is good, right? So we're working with people that are extremely bright, extremely hardworking, extremely motivated. And I think the biggest risk is it not being challenging enough. It needs to be intellectually challenging and stimulating to get them to lean forward and engage. Otherwise, they're just not gonna bother. So I think really stretching is a good thing for this audience. Things that are a little bit maybe uncomfortable sometimes because it's hard. The other thing is to make it real, to always try to make it real. If we're talking in theory, people get bored very quickly. So the idea when we were bringing in the industry panel, it was fantastic, right? So I had talked about some concepts in the morning. The industry panel came in, and the industry people literally were like parroting back what I had just said, and there was no planning in that, and it just all of a sudden validated the concepts that we were talking about. I said, yeah, this is real stuff. This isn't just kind of classroom content. And finally, I think importantly is we don't lecture, we problem solve, right? So if it feels like we're talking at the audience, it just doesn't work very well. If we feel like we're all in the room together, trying to solve this collective problem that we have, this shared problem that we have, and we're working through it, becomes a much more positive learning experience and a much more positive environment. It's just how adults like to learn. So kind of my feedback or thoughts from this experience as well. So things to think about as we move forward. So what now? I'd just like to wrap up with a couple things. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take, this is a new situation we're in now, obviously, right? And we may not run, this program was great, fantastic. The next one we run of this will be even better. But we may not run a similar program to this for the foreseeable future. So what we're trying to do now is we're trying to take kind of the principles and the approach that we've developed in a real environment, and we've started to do in an online environment, and really start to accelerate kind of how do we do this in an online kind of distance learning approach, okay? And so we've got really two programs right now that we're running around this. One is the Connecting with Industry live masterclass series. So this is basically the equivalent of 2 to 3 full days worth of workshop, but it's delivered over a series of six live webinars. Lots of cohort building activities, application assignments, and some real feedback around the content that they're working on. And both of these programs can be relevant for PhD students and for early career researchers, excuse me. It's okay, you work for both. The other one is, and this is a little bit new, it's coming, we're working on it right now, is the Enterprising Research, and this is more of a self-directed program. So it's actually got 20 modules, still application activities, individual action planning, and we've got this cool elements which are expert industry interviews. So what we're bringing in is real live industry experts to share their insights and experience. So it's almost like having a live panel in the room, but in a virtual environment. And it's really the equivalent of kind of a 1-week program. So it's more intense, heavier content, less emphasis around the cohort building and the interaction. That makes sense. So the enterprising research it's coming soon to a laptop near you. So it's actually in development right now. It's in the beta version we've got right now. We've got a fantastic team of advisors that have come on board, over 12 advisors from universities in the UK, Europe, actually across the world, to help inform how we develop this. So we're getting feedback around that. We're going to go through a refinement process, and then we're going to go live with the first version of this come May 1st. And what we're looking for now, or the opportunity now, is for a number of pilot groups to run. So it's not free pilots when we still need to charge for it. So to be able to build these things, but if you're able and you're interested in getting on board, kind of coming to the first movers around this, then we'll offer a pretty significant discount, and we'll also add in kind of 2 recorded interviews, specific industry centric. So if you've got if you're I've got a group of folks interested in artificial intelligence or medical devices or whatever that may be, we can get some really specific kind of industry content to kind of build out that program. The only thing we ask is that you let us know before April 15th. We're only going to be doing this with 5 groups. And then we're going to kind of release it on a kind of to the public, if you will, more broadly. All right. So fantastic opportunity. The other thing is, if you get on board, you really do help in the development of this. You really help inform the early stages. Your input will be extremely valuable. So you'll really have a hand in kind of designing this piece. Okay. If you're interested in getting involved in this, just email Allison, or if you express interest in the exit survey, we'll follow up and we can figure out how to do this. So it might be an opportunity to bring something new, to your learners right now, quite topical, and a way to kind of engage with them as well, something different. So just about ready to wrap it up. Don't leave quite yet. Just a couple more things. So the goal was 1 new idea, 1 insight, 1 learning, 1 action, right? If you could come up with 1 of those things, that would be great. So hopefully we've achieved that goal. If we haven't, apologize. Hopefully we have. Hopefully we've gotten to more than 1, maybe a few things there. So thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thank our guests for our time. You can find them on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to them personally. We'll get their contact details as well, so you can connect with them if you want. So we thank you all. And again, please complete the exit survey. You'll be prompted when you leave to be able to do that. And it helps us a lot in terms of making these things better and more value for you. And finally, as we say goodbye, please be safe out there, be kind to each other, and let's help all of us help each other get through this challenging time, and keep moving forward in a positive way. So I thank you all very much, and I guess with that, I will say goodbye. We'll share the webinar. Get in contact if you guys want to look at some of the programs we're offering, and yeah, we'll see you in a month, if not earlier, when we talk about online training. Thank you guys very much. Bye now.